We would like to take another moment to thank our sponsors, whose financial support helps make Captime's Idea Fest the important event that it is. Special thanks to our presenting sponsor, UBS, the Burrish Group. They have been a major sponsor since the very first Idea Fest. Major sponsors include HealthX Ventures, Exact Sciences, and Quartz. Co-sponsors are Madison Gas and Electric, Godfrey & Kahn Law, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Epic. Our Friends of Idea Fest sponsors are Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, Madison Community Foundation, University Research Park, Cargo Coffee, Doc Smokehouse, and Forward Theater Company. Our media partners are the Wisconsin State Journal, Madison.com, WKOW Channel 27, and Hinckley Productions. Again, we thank you for your support and for making Idea Fest 2021 a huge success.
Hello again, everybody. Well, we turn to a local issue in this next session. I'm Paul Fanlund, if you haven't been at in this auditorium before. As the description of the program says, downtown Madison is at an inflection point. Are we on a path to becoming a big little city or a little big one? Our moderator today is Jason Ilstrup, whose job as president of Downtown Madison, Inc. is about that very question. What should downtown Madison be, and how can it be for everyone, and what do we need to do to get there? He's joined by the mayor, Sadie Rose Conway, whose views and public policy decisions obviously have a huge impact on the future of downtown Madison. Jason and the mayor will be joined by Jessica Cavazos, president and CEO of the Madison-based Wisconsin Latino Chamber of Commerce. Also on the panel is Amy Supple, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Edgewater, and she has extensive background in Madison real estate and community development. And our final panelist is Ellie Westman-Chin, President and CEO of Destination Madison, which is devoted to increasing the economic impact of tourism on Madison. I'm going to interrupt just for a second because I forgot to mention this. We do have a reception at the end of the day. It's on us. It's going to be wonderful food. It's in front of the Historical Society building out front. So if you're around, it'll be a chance to be outside and gather with friends. This week, with the help of Polco, the Cap Times polling partner, we fielded a survey to gauge aspirations people have across Madison for their downtown's future. And Jason will share the results. As in every previous session, we'll take questions from the audience on index cards and deliver them up to Jason. So please welcome our panel to the stage today. Thank you. You bet.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a great panel on what the future of downtown Madison looks like. We have a very fantastic group of panelists here today. Mayor Rhodes Conway, Amy Supple, Ellie Westman-Chin, and Jessica Cavazos, all huge advocates and helpers in downtown pre the pandemic, but certainly post the pandemic as well. So we're very excited for a conversation. But the conversation actually started a week or so ago with some poll questions about what brings you to downtown now? We got varied responses. And people said, by far, events are the number one choice why they come downtown. 68% of over hundreds of people said that's why they come downtown. I think that's good news for the event folks here. But a lot of people also live, work, and play downtown. One of the questions was, what do you want to see in the future of downtown? And by far the biggest answer was they want to see diverse and unique retail and restaurant options. I think that's a huge topic for what we want today. It was just so heartening to have so many people participating in this poll and how much people in this town care about downtown. So I think before we begin about the future of downtown, what do you all think creates a successful downtown? What are the elements to a successful downtown?
Well, I think you can sum up what makes a successful downtown in one word, and that word is diversity. And I mean diversity in every possible interpretation. Diversity of businesses, diversity of building types, diversity of people, diversity of economic diversity, social diversity, I mean, anything. Downtown should be a meeting place, a mixing place, an activity center where there's a lot of things happening, and that it's not all the same, right? I think that, everything you look at out there, that what makes a successful spot, right, suggests that really what you're looking for is diversity in a bunch of different ways.
I can answer next. I think interconnectivity, I was thinking about that this morning as far as how does that look? I've been living here almost 5 years, and I didn't really ever go to State Street that much, right? I went once a year, maybe twice a year, shop there. But now there's like reasons to come to State Street. Like there are activities that I feel that are welcoming for my children and I. So, that intergenerational mix of fun for me is really important. Even with COVID, I think that we had more time to walk up and down State Street with my kids and then find things to do and actually look at the city in a different light. And when we talk about diversity and how it looks at all different ways, I think diversity, once you start inviting folks and once you start catering to their needs, downtown becomes a lot more fun and a lot more appealing. I always say, what makes downtown sexy, right? And so, it would be having things to do, having people to interact with. One of the biggest things that I've seen in downtowns that don't have a lot of foot traffic, and where they look lonely is the lack of businesses. So, as an advocate for businesses, I think our businesses are the vitality of each downtown. So, it's like you have all these towns around the main staple, and downtown is that main staple. So how do we get those activities that will bring diverse people and make downtown really appealing to everybody? And that's one of the things that I think we have to have for a successful downtown, and Madison is doing that, and I see that more and more, and even more so now. I don't know why it took COVID and these interactions to happen for me to actually now, and my family and people that I know, want to come downtown. So.
Ellie, I think the visitor, your line of business, is quite important to that diversity and creating vibrancy in a downtown. How important is tourism and visitors to a downtown?
I think it's a combination. I think residents are really important to the downtown economy, but visitors too. And if you look at the national research, most restaurants and retails will tell you, of course, hotels about 100%, but most restaurants and retail will tell you it's about 50-50 their business. It's 50% residents coming in, 50% visitors. So when I look at downtown Madison, I think it's a combination of really, it's government, it's office workers, it's the visitor, and then of course it's our residents in general. And I think that's really important. And downtown for us is the hub of groups and sports, conventions, and meetings. So for our visitors, we know that when we get a group here, their attendees are going to walk around Madison and they're going to say, I want to come back here because they have such a phenomenal experience in Madison and while they're here.
And Amy, as the manager of a fantastic hotel right here in downtown, but also someone that's been in development, how important are local events, right? Our poll said that 71% of people are coming downtown because of events. And you run a ton of events in your space. How important is that for a successful downtown?
Oh, I think it's critical. What really makes a great downtown is the experience that people can have in the downtown. And I agree, it has to be diverse, it has to be fun, and it has to appeal to a broad range of audiences. And so, to me, when I think about what makes a vibrant downtown, the first word that comes into my mind is programming. because you want to bring the resident base of the downtown out, but you also want to bring the resident base from the surrounding community down. And people from Madison sort of become the fabric of what the guests and visitors see. That's what they love about Madison, is just the vibrancy of people on bikes and walking on the streets and experiencing the unique retail shops we have and the unique restaurants we have. That's what makes us different than Chicago or Minneapolis or Austin or Ann Arbor or any of the other cities. It's what makes people want to come to Madison and what's unique and different about us that drives the visitor here. And we do that very, very well.
I think, to sort of sum the point up, and I think the mayor hit it right on the head to begin with, a quote from a good friend of mine, Angela Russell, from CUNA Mutual, just a fantastic leader in this community, who said, you need to build these soulful places, these soulful moments, these soulful experiences for all souls in Madison. And I think that hits it right on the head. And I think we've hopefully seen, after the last 18 months, much more intentionality in that. But let's step back and talk about the last 18 months, right? It's been very difficult for the city. Mayor, I don't envy your job right now. So many different things happening at once. Obviously, just downtown, right? COVID has been, unfortunately, caused innumerable suffering for many businesses and their employees in particular. An economy that is, before COVID, $300 million in tourism spending in downtown alone. That's a quarter of all tourism spending. Those jobs, poof, went away, down to $120 million. 2,000 employees lost their jobs just in downtown. How did the pandemic and I would say the incredible, powerful Black Lives Matter movement as well, and some of the protest activities, how did that change downtown Madison over the last 18 months?
But I think, Jason, you put your finger on it already. It's the intentionality, right? I think that we had been seeing trends downtown for a while that were intensified. So just for example, right, everybody knows that retail has been struggling, right? That's been true for years. Now we really understand it, right? Now I think everybody gets that, right? And so I think that one of the things that the pandemic has done for us downtown in economic development, and really across the board, it has brought problems into focus. And those problems are bad and large and complicated and wicked, right? But having them in focus and having them articulated allows us to be better at solving them. And so there is a certain amount of we understand what the problems are now, and we can focus on solving them now. And so I see a lot more intentionality happening. I see people understanding that downtown was comfortable for some people in our community, but not for everyone, right? I see people understanding that we had certain types of businesses that were being more successful downtown than others, and that if that trend continued, we were going to be in a bad place because we were going to lack that diversity of businesses, right? And so I think that attention is good. The problems are difficult, but we're paying more attention to them now.
I think one of the things that was so interesting for our business is not just that the business stopped with visitors coming in from other communities, but that the business stopped from people in the local area and regional area coming downtown. And that was both shocking and troubling from the standpoint of it didn't make a ton of sense to me. And I would talk to people and I would say, I go downtown every day and it's, things have changed. Our eyes have been opened in a good way. But, Madison is still Madison and you should come downtown. I think one of the things that we need to pay attention to in this, and one of the lessons that comes out of it is just, how do we attract people from the surrounding areas as our foundational base to the business community and to the events and everything that comes downtown. And to the mayor's point, how do you make that successful for everyone, every community that wants to come into the downtown and make it inviting and accessible? So that was one of the sort of things that I think is not always immediately apparent, but something I think is important for us to focus on.
Jessica, actually, I want to ask you kind of a follow-up question to that. Back to intentionality. I think many have said that what COVID has done, particularly to the economy, is it's accelerated trends, just as the mayor said, in many areas, right? Retail, delivery economy. And those have drastic effects on a downtown, right, where experiences are. But it opens up opportunities. One opportunity is the amazing program that, honestly, you and the mayor are partnering with on right now, which is the PopUp Shop program on the 400 block of State Street. And the work you're doing with Macy from the Hmong Chamber and Camille from the Black Chamber. Tell us about why that is an important project for downtown and why more projects like that have to happen together with the city, with DMI, with the BID, with JD McCormick, with a whole series of groups involved.
I think I want to go back to the previous question.
Oh, you can answer whatever question you want.
Because, I do believe that the BLM movement made us more susceptible to what's going on really in our world, and opened our eyes to the voids that are in different communities and how people feel. And we really have to honor that. We have to honor that people are hurt, that people feel that they're disenfranchised, and that they feel like they're not invited. And when you're not invited, what's going to happen, right? I do believe that because of the movement, we all are now trying to figure out how to work together. And, when you sit down and you break bread, and I was having this conversation with Macy from the Hmong Chamber, because now I understand, like, differences between her community and our community and the Latino community. How do we start healing through what I say is economic development, right? How do we start using the power that we have, or the power that we got in the sense of mobilization, to create spaces where everybody feels like they're welcome? And so through the pop-up shop, Mayor, I think one of the most wonderful things that happened there is that you created, and the city created, the synergy between different groups. So Black, Latino, Asian came together to kind of figure out what we're going to do to resolve some of these issues and some of these voids. And in the pop-up shop right now, it's just exciting to see individuals who are disadvantaged in so many ways, generational, gaps of wealth that continue to perpetuate their families, where they will never have the opportunity on their own to have a space on State Street, just because of a lot of them. One of the businesses forever, one of the businesses, she's a retailer, and she said to me, I've always had the dream of having a shop on State Street. I just didn't know if I was ever going to be able to afford it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've cried with her. Like, I'm like very emotional. So I cried with her because I saw her excitement when she was looking at this blank wall that is only like about 10 by 10 in the one space, because it's a shared space, and the space is at 440 in State Street. And these business owners is coming and dreaming up what the future might look like, and how they're going to be able to expose this whole new audience to their products and their business is amazing. And so I think that is where we start. How do we create these impactful programs? You said you said programs, right? So impactful programs to heal communities, to invite them in, to create some form of economic sustainability for their families. And I think it's further than just trying to, create an event downtown. It's really, how do we create long-term wealth by giving access to people who have always felt that they haven't had any, right? And so with these programs, so the pop-up shop is just the first one, I do believe, but it also, one more thing, the city hired a young woman who is of Vietnamese background. She comes from a family of refugees. She totally gets it. She is there, like, advocating. She moves whatever paperwork she has to move, red tape, and she gets us in. And then sometimes she's like, Jessica, I need you to work with these people because they don't understand the process, and I just can't get too involved because of her role, but the chambers can. So then that's the trifecta of partnerships. So the chamber could say, you need insurance, you need this, It's a beautiful partnership, and I think that more programs like this, the intentionality, the authentic understanding that people have differences, and they're all different. Like, even within Latinos, we all have we have 32 countries that we need to realize that they have different cultures within those countries, right? So I think we need to do more of that. We need to have dialogue. You know, Amy and yourself and a bunch of us, we got to the Edgewater and we kind of broke down like, how do we help evolve this program? And that's how that happened, right? So we need to do more of that.
You know, I think that brings up a good point about one thing that has been a positive from COVID is the amount of private-public partnerships that are happening right now. It seems as though the groups are together, the chambers are closer, the civic groups are closer together, and I think that is very positive. And you see that in some of the work that's happening downtown. We also see that in some of the different events that are happening downtown, whether or not it's Rob Dees' amazing, Madlit Festival on the 100 block of State Street, the exceptional continuation of events like Dane Dances. But to events are huge, right? We already heard that information from the public. Allie, where are we today? Where is downtown today with events? I have to say it was amazing and also quite intimidating to see all of the folks from Ironman here last week, right? With, just, I don't know how they do it. They, let's just go exercise for 14 hours straight, right? Where is the event business today? Because that is so important to downtown. And where do you see it in the next sort of short and long term for downtown?
Well, I think the local events that are produced, like Art Fair on the Square is coming back downtown next weekend. The farmers market coming back. That's all really important because those are all things that visitors will come into town and do, and they love it. As far as events are concerned, yes, it was so exciting to have CrossFit back and Ironman back and World Dairy's right around the corner. And we're seeing more and more interest in that because I will tell you, for about a year, we weren't getting phone calls back. Everybody was shell-shocked. Nobody was really booking events, looking at booking events, or really even looking further into the future than about the next day because they were rebooking their events that they had in 20 for future years, and they were rebooking those in the cities that they were already booked in. So if you had something booked in Madison, we have that rebooked for 22 or 23. So now that we're coming out of that, I'm not going to say we're coming out of COVID, but as we keep moving down the path, I should say, we're seeing more of those phone calls, more of that activity, more of that creativity of what can we bring back and what new sporting events and groups and meetings can we bring here that haven't been to Madison before to experience what we have to offer.
Yeah, the question to both Amy and the mayor, where do you think downtown is today? Obviously, have some information, pedestrian counts, hotel traffic, revenue from locations. It seems as though it's coming back. The office tenants are a little slower to come back. Obviously, the Delta variant changed things. We hear from the parking garages and the main towers that it's taking a while. Where do you see downtown as of today, September 18th?
Sure. I'm cautiously optimistic. I feel like we're in a much better place than we were 6 months ago, or a year ago for sure. But we still don't have those large events coming back. Monona Terrace is feeling the impact of that. Much more on the local side, as Ellie said, right? We have, Dane Dances was great. We have weddings happening. We have, but it's not people coming in from outside as much. I do think locally we're seeing a lot more people come back downtown for just whatever they might have otherwise, right? I mean, I'm, stopping in to get lunch or to pick something up at one of the stores or, whatever it might be. But that's not enough, right? It's the base, but, we still are lacking the people coming in from other places. And then, to your point, Jason, a lot of the offices are not back yet. We in the city, I would say, are substantially back, maybe about 50%. We have a very generous telework policy right now, but we are asking people to be in the office at least some days of the week. I think the state is doing the same, but that's not everybody. And you can really, you walk out at lunchtime on a weekday, there's a lot more going on now than there was months ago. It's still not up to the levels that it was.
Yeah, I think that it's so important to realize, there are some factors that make a successful downtown, right? You have to have a lot of residents. 30,000 residents downtown has. We're the envy of many cities our sizes, because we have that. Yeah. We have 51,000 employees working downtown, 37% of those in public sector. And so it's important that the state, the county, and the city come back. Amy, how are you seeing it? As someone really who understands development, but also hospitality, where do you think downtown Madison sits today?
Well, picking up on what you just said, I can't stress the importance of bringing the office community back to downtown. For restaurants in particular, but also for retail. The model to make those businesses work really requires, in the downtown environment, really requires at least 2 meal periods, if not 3. And when you're lacking, 50% or more of, the business that you might otherwise do because the office business isn't there, the model's not sustainable. So as we get through the second year of the pandemic here, there was a lot of federal money and a lot of state money and a lot of support from the city and the county for these businesses to continue, but realistically into the long term, that's not as feasible. So I really think it's important that we start to see, in a safe way, business come back to downtown to ensure that sector of the economy continues to be buoyant in the long term. I'll tell you from the hospitality standpoint, Delta had a pretty big impact. But the good news is that people want to come back. So we know people are ready. And when they feel safe, they'll do it. And I think what I've told our folks is to expect that it will be slow. We sort of, people got vaccinated and then they were really excited and there was this surge and we all said to ourselves, oh, it's back. And then the Delta variant kind of popped the balloon. And now I think what we have to realize is we're going to move back slowly and deliberately and smartly. And it's going to take a little time, and we should expect that. And we should set our business plans and our models to do that. And I think the mayor said something that's really important, which is we have an opportunity now to move forward in a different and intentional way with a knowledge base that we didn't have before. And so what are we going to do with that opportunity that's presented to ourselves, and how are we going to do things differently? So I think that's the challenge that the business community is sort of putting in front of itself right now. And I think it's going to be really interesting.
We've talked a lot about what's happening right now with downtown, what's happened in the past few years. Now it's time to talk about the future, right? Paul Famlin said at the beginning of his presentation, a quote that the mayor and I have heard many times, that Madison is going from a big little city to a little big city right before our eyes, right? Zach Brandon, my contemporary at the chamber, always talks about how Austin, 20 years ago, pre-Dell and pre-this, was sort of growing, and we're having the same sorts of things. How are these large changes, right? Growth, what did we see? 16% increase from the last census. Alder Mike Revere's district, the 4th district, which is basically just the Capitol Square and a little bit of the near west side, has 6,500 too many residents, basically 50% over what the Alder district should be. The growth is happening downtown. So how is this growth going to affect downtown, the center? And I think it's important when you're answering this question, remember, we're on an isthmus. Those that are watching worldwide, everything gets sort of literally squeezed in, and all roads go through the isthmus. We're part of something called the International Downtown Association. I use the word isthmus, and I think one, think I'm using a swear word, and then 2, they say, wait, literally all roads go through the isthmus. So that puts a lot of pressure on downtown. So how will these big changes affect the future of downtown?
Well, Jason, this is literally why I ran for mayor, right? Because I have spent, over a decade looking at other cities and the trajectories that they were following, and seeing Madison being, a little bit behind that, right? Looking at Austin, right? Looking at DC, looking at Boston, looking at the growth and the lack of growth in both housing and transit that was crushing the success of their cities. And so we have this opportunity, right, as we're growing, to get it right and to not end up being, totally unaffordable, over-gentrified, inaccessible, traffic-bound, right, which is what you see in some cities, right, but to rather do something differently. And I think that, as we look forward, none of those pressures have changed, right? The pandemic didn't alter any of that. It may have pressed pause on some of it, but with the growth that we see we know that's still out there waiting for us. And so we have this opportunity to think about what kind of downtown we do want, right? And to make some choices now that will put us on, I think, a better path for the future. And, I know I sound like a broken record around these things, but to me, it comes back to housing and to transit, right? We have to make sure that people are able to get around our city, and specifically to get around downtown in a way that doesn't involve one person, one car. All roads go through the isthmus. We do not have room for those cars, right? We just literally don't, right? So we have to make that possible, right? And then we have to make it possible for people to be able to afford to live in any neighborhood in Madison, so they can have that choice, and to be able to afford to live downtown if that's what they want. And that's lacking right now, right? We don't have a lot of affordability options downtown. And so I think that that's one of our big challenges, and it may match up in an interesting way with the office question. I think everybody's trying to read the tea leaves on telework in the long term. I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as everybody teleworking, right? But I also don't think everybody's coming back to the office. And so that opens up questions about, what do you do with vacant offices? Can they be converted into housing, right? Can they be converted into other community spaces? Is there something interesting that we can gain there as we lose offices? I don't know the answers here, but that is the kind of question that I think we have to ask about what the future of downtown is, and where are the investments and changes that need to be made in order to keep downtown active, right? And to keep people coming here and living and working and playing, because that's the only way that we are successful in the long term.
I think, I agree with everything you said. I think what is really interesting about the time we're in is that COVID did hit a pause button on the accelerated growth that we saw in this economy and in the city over the last 20 years plus. And, we've got a moment in time here where we can really ask ourselves, what do we want to be? And Jason, you hit on a really important point. The downtown is really defined by a set of limitations, if you will, on what can happen. So we're on an isthmus, the capital height limit. There are residential neighborhoods, there are commercial zones, there's retail zones, there's things that are established, which are all good and have worked. Things can be improved and better, but those, how investment comes into the downtown going forward, and then what that investment spurs in terms of the public realm, transit, parking, services, utilities, retail, all of those things. We have a minute right now to just ask ourselves, where are we going? And then I think of things sort of in terms of layers. If this is where we're going and here's the strategy to get here, what are all the layers of things that need to happen below that? And how do we maximize the utilization of the infrastructure, both public and private, that needs to go into the downtown to really ensure that we can continue to grow over a 20-year period? And when you look at that and you start to say, okay, that's really interesting. That's the work, that you've done and looked at across the country, and I've had the good fortune to do in a few cities around the country. You start to say, okay, that's great. And then you have to frame that in an economic reality too, because these limitations put some limitation on the ability of the downtown to generate tax base and revenue for the balance of the city. There's an enormous tax base that comes out of the city that helps pay for services all over Madison and all over the county. And that's a wonderful thing. We want that to continue to grow into the future. So that has to be part of the equation too, is what is the economic framework that all of this growth wants to sit in, and how do we maximize it? Because there's only a few places where we really can incent that growth to happen and really see a tremendous return on investment.
And I think, the economic importance of downtown shouldn't be understated. About 11% of the total property tax in the city comes from between Blair and Park Street, which is less than 1% of land. One of the interesting statistics that we found over the last year or so is that of that land between Blair and Park, over 50% is non-taxable, right?
Yeah.
So it's university, government, which is great. We're actually starting to see some of that land potentially open up to the private side. The State of Wisconsin Investment Board building on East Wilson is just one of them. Governor Evers and Secretary Brennan's work potentially with Jeff 1, Jeff 2, Jeff 3, and the Department of Administration building, it really does change what looks at downtown. But Ellie, I have a question for you. When you rebuild it not rebuild the downtown, but you build up a downtown, the tourist and the visitor is huge because the visitor economy can build these amazing amenities, you know what, that benefit us.
Yes.
I mean, who doesn't love to go to the 10th floor of the AC hotel, right? And that was built for tourists, but yet we get that advantage. How important is that visitor economy for sort of how we build the future and these really great amenities that all of us can enjoy?
Yeah, Jason, I think that's so important because things usually aren't built just for visitors. You know, it's built to really benefit both the visitor and the resident. And when I started in my tourism career, I started my career in Nashville, Tennessee, so I've seen crazy growth. And while I was there, the Country Music Hall of Fame opened. And we were so excited because back in the day, before social media, if a city had a new attraction about once every 10 years, then they could stay fresh because that's what they figured it took for visitors to come in and experience it, and then you kind of run out of the new people, right? Well, that's not like that today. Today is, I was here yesterday, I'm coming back next weekend, what's new, right? You're like,
where's the new Instagrammable mural up that says yes?
That's exactly right. And so, you know, I think it's really important to not only look at development and growth, but what do we have here that we can create around? And, you know, one of the things I've talked to, I think, each of you about is telling our cultural heritage story, getting into our deep roots of how Madison got here and the people who made it. You know, I'm really big on, and I'm sure the staff is tired of hearing me say this, but I want a mural trail. We have phenomenal murals all over our city and downtown. Well, let's tell visitors where they are, because those are Instagram-worthy moments, and they tag us, and then more people see us. So the development is so important, but not only development of like a new building going up or a new attraction, but just the development of what do we have here that we can embrace and promote and work within our
Just so we're clear, every time we all on this panel say Instagrammable moment, we get some sort of treat, and so we're going to try to say it as many times. We get some Union Utopia ice cream for
That's
it.
my whole world that I live in is social media and Instagrammable moments.
Before we get to the next question for Jessica, I think it's really important to talk about this work. The next question is about public-private partnerships for Jessica. Is some of this work that's just sort of happening. And one of this is a history of Black Madison downtown, which is so powerful, particularly on the Near East Side, on East Mifflin Street, and the work that Heather Bailey, the mayor's office, the Wisconsin Historical Society, Destination Madison, Peter Gray, and several other people are doing to put together a tour with Hill Grocery and Benny Butts' house. The amazing story of the American Exchange Bank. I don't think the average Madisonian knows that the building just prior to the building that went up was a hotel, a Black-owned hotel owned by the grandchildren of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Heming. And the two brothers are buried in Forest Hill Cemetery. This is an amazing history that, shame on me, why do I not know that as the person that helps with the biggest booster for downtown this city should have? We need to be able to tell that story.
That's right.
The best way to be able to tell that story, though, is through public-private partnerships. And for those that don't know Jessica Cavazos, there is no better person in our community bringing different groups together to get this work done. Why is it so important that all of these different chambers, the United Ways, Destination Madison, the Community Foundation, Latino Chamber, DMI, why is it so important that we all work together to help build the future of downtown?
I want to say that when I see the chambers, and more so like the smaller chambers, the ethnic chambers that are working right now with Destination Madison, we're working with the mayor's office, and Amy has been helping us kind of craft, the future of welcoming downtown, the welcoming factor of downtown. I really do think that the trifecta of private-public partnerships has to happen. It's kind of like when you have the mind, the heart, and the gut and the courage. Our chambers don't have the financial sustainability And so what happens is that we have the history, we have access to people, we know some of the stories of some of those individuals that started businesses, but then how do we, how do we get a platform to tell those stories? Like that, I didn't even know that, and I would love to see, go and discover places that really will teach me the history of Madison. So I think with this, what's going on right now with the opportunity to work with these wonderful organizations here in Madison, like, United Way and our meeting, where we brainstormed, right?
Yes, we did.
We brainstormed, how do we find funding for this sustainability and the access to tell those stories, to get people down, for the staycations, for people to discover what we have, what the treasures that Madison has, and how do we partner? And maybe, a lot of times there's these differences. We are at this table, we're not friendly. I'm not smiling. I smile all the time, but I don't smile at those meetings. And some of those meetings have to do with, issues that are very, I think we're trying to also change the mindset of folks. The preconceived notion of what a Latino is, or what we celebrate, or our culture, and say, hey, no, we're also modern. We also, have, we're in the biotech fields. We have families that are third, fourth generation American, and so it's very important that when you bring these organizations that have the history, the heart, and the stories together with Destination Madison that has access to a lot of the resources, that we all sit together and kind of brainstorm what the future of Madison, and then we're at the table. Because one of the things that I don't like is when I'm asked to be at the table already when the plan is, set. And that's like, the reality is I'm always at the table when the plan has already been created, and then they want to instill our communities into the plan, and it doesn't work. It's not going to work. It's not going to create inclusion. It's not going to create equity. So, with the trifecta of the bringing in like American Family to do things with these different chambers, to the exact sciences that are reaching out on health equity, and also working with Destination Madison and trying to figure out how we impact communities, not only through programming and events, but also through these dialogue and discussions to get to know who they are, who's in your community, how can you connect with them, how can you bring them into the conversation and not, and again, I feel like I'm fighting against the current, right? Because I would love to tell people more things about how they can include Latinos into the conversation. One of the most impactful meetings or Zoom calls that I had from the many that we have is when we were talking with the Department of Transportation, and they were, showing us how during COVID, the people who are still coming into downtown were the people who are sometimes the disenfranchised folks who don't come to downtown. They're the people who are working, who are still, part of our ecosystem because of their labor, are those people who were the hardest impacted. They're the ones that are on the bus. They're the ones that are traveling in. I learned so much during COVID because all this information was being thrown at the chamber, as a thought partner, right? In so many conversations, we are a thought partner, but I really do think that we need to have more thought partners. We need to have more dialogue. We need to create these access points so that the chambers and other associations that are giving direct services to our small businesses can survive. And one of the most beautiful things that happened last week was meeting with Destination Madison. They enlightened the chamber to a grant that could actually help us build up our capacity. And so what does that do? Then we can hire more people to give more services, to provide more inroads to businesses. And at the end of the day, it's how do we all work together and create a harmonious community. And I'm always very kumbaya. I like to see things work for the benefit of everybody. So it really, not to be long-winded, right? But the trifecta of private-public partnerships is so important because I do think, some folks, they're looking at these projects and they're like, oh, I'm going to get taxed. But then you get the private sector to invest in them, and they are willing to invest, and they see a benefit to it. And we have to get them to the table to do that investment. So you know, I'm for it. I'm always like, I think these are the busiest days of my career right now, because I'm at the table with many people and trying to really be a voice for, you know, I always say the underdog, the man out there really wanting to be part of something, you know?
Okay, big question here. What will Madison look like, downtown Madison look like in 2030? Now, I'm not going to ask a hard question, not answer it myself. So I'm going to say two things. I think we need to, I'm that confident of a moderator that I'll just answer my own questions. Jessica hit it right on the head, right in the middle of her presentation. It was so important. I hope two things happen with downtown. The transportation, transit in particular, gets seen as an essential service, right? And two, that's three. Two, we reimagine the use of public space, right? And I think we've seen that through the Street Art program. So there you go. I asked a hard question, but I'll answer it myself. So what should downtown Madison look like in 2030?
Well, I don't know that one of us could answer that in full, but since you started with a couple of things, right, both of which I agree with, by the way, I would like to see more affordability. And I say that both in terms of housing and who can afford to live downtown, but perhaps even more importantly, in terms of what businesses can afford to locate downtown. And I think we're starting on that with the pop-up shops and the programs and the partnerships that we're building. But I would really like to see that grow so that the cost of commercial rent is not the thing that keeps somebody from locating their business downtown. The other thing that I think we're going to have to see is that we are going to have to see a broader diversity of types of businesses, right? We've relied a little bit on food service and straight up retail, and I think we're going to have to start to move into more experience, a broader range of types of businesses, because we really don't want to be just one thing, and it's going to be hard for coming out of the pandemic, right? And we already have seen businesses not succeed and not be able to survive the pandemic, which is tragic, but will continue, I think, to be true. And so we are going to have to diversify the downtown economy. The other thing I'll say is that, by 2030, if we haven't figured out how to cut our climate change emissions to near zero, we're all screwed. So downtown in 2030 had better be a much, much more sustainable place than it is today.
I would like to see business and government working better together in the future. I think Madison is got a reputation for some conflict there, and I think Jessica hit on an important point, which is the pandemic has seen a lot of good people come together and try and figure things out. And I think we have some big issues in front of us: climate change, affordable housing, where's development going to go, infrastructure, transportation, transit. These are things that many of us don't agree on, every piece of it. But if we're going to be the city of the future, in a great world-class city in the future, government and business need to figure out how to work together better. So that is something that I'd like to see become part of our strategy as we go forward. The other piece I'd really like to see happen is really magnifying all the things that are great about Madison and creating, to your point, more in the public realm, more about public art, more about public spaces, more about our streetscapes and our architecture that draws visitors in from around the country. I am, really in love with this city, and I think everyone, I know from just being at the front desk all the time, people who come visit here just love it here. And I think there can be more of them. And I think that's good for the city to see more visitation and that sort of thing, and people coming from all over the country. So I'd love us to magnify what's already great about this city.
I have a couple dreams. So
You always have to have more than one dream.
okay. Well, definitely you know, top of my list is diversity and inclusion. You know, when I moved here, when I was interviewing for the job and when I moved here, it was just so heartening to see all these great conversations happening, all this passion around it. I think we are, it might not feel like it at times, but I do think we're worlds ahead of other cities I've lived in this conversation. And I think that's really important because I think we can get mired in the, oh no, we need to do this, we're not as good at this, but really, comparatively, I think you guys are doing a great job in these conversations. So you can give yourself kudos on that. There's two projects that this is totally from a visitor perspective that I'd love to see come to fruition. One is the Destination District, which is, you know, the conversation that's been happening about the parks and the trails and the bike trail between Monona Terrace and Alliant Energy Center, and connecting those two. That works for the residents. It works really well for the resident, for the visitor, and plus it's such a great way to come in our city on John Nolan Drive. It's got to be one of the best views we have in the city. And then two, the other project that I'm working on, I'm on committee, is Music Cities and the importance of music in a city, because that brings together people in so many different ways, not only the diversity of music, but supporting our artists and supporting our venues and so forth, because I've seen the difference it can make. I came from Nashville, or I worked in Nashville. Well, of course, it was country music, has been forever. But then I lived in Atlanta. And when I was in Atlanta, the hip hop scene became very popular. And it was so interesting to watch how that really affected the city in such a great and positive way. So I'd love to see some of these projects move forward and start coming to fruition.
I'm going to talk as a mom. I think downtown and you know, the center city has to have more, you know, spaces for families to engage and enjoy, and I'd also like to see more malleable spaces that can be used for different things, meeting spaces, or whether it's quinceañeras or, you know, birthdays that have that beautiful view. I'll tell you that you know, I was raised in the inner city of Milwaukee, 5 minutes away from downtown, and I saw the disparities and how downtown's changed over 25 years. You know, it went from bustling to then, you know, just decimated in its businesses and just the flow of people and even cultural events. But what I did see once the Deer District went back in and they invested all that money into having the Deer District, right? Go Bucks. I think one of the things that did happen is people started coming back downtown. And so now I haven't gone back to Milwaukee all that much, but, you know, as a tourist, but I see the same thing happening here, but we have it. I mean, we don't really need to reinvent it. We don't, you know, we have beautiful landscapes. We have the trails that you talked about, and those are the things that I'm discovering with my children. But we also need to make those more inviting to other communities and let people know that they're there, and have activities that are, you know, maybe they're dual language, or they're, you know, cultural activities, not just on the outskirts of the city, not just putting people on Park Street, but putting them, you know, outside of Park Street, bringing them in. I do believe that we need green space. I see every successful, wonderful city when I go to, I'm from Texas originally, when I see people, you know, Austin has this vibe of like, at night it's about like the nightlife, right? But in the daytime you see a lot of families, you see a lot of people visiting museums, you see people, you know, the hotels have something that people can just come in and, you know, they can see and be invested and involved with. And so I think we have to do a better job promoting those things that we have here, but also, you know, having more for families and intergeneration. Again, I'm going to talk about the sandwich generation. You know, you have your parents, you have your small children. How do you go to a place, or where do you go to, you know, have something for everybody? And that would be, I would say downtown could do that, but, you know, we need to invest more in downtown and make it more, you know, make it more of a hot spot for everyone, not just for a certain amount of people or certain people.
Yeah, some great urbanist, probably insert the word Jane Jacobs in there, said that if you build a city for 6-year-olds and 86-year-olds, you build the city for everyone, right?
That's right.
So it's true. It's really important what we do with the Madison Senior Center and the AARP age-friendly city work. It's equally as important. What are we doing with the Children's Museum right downtown, the kids in the Rotunda, the WISO, the Madison Youth Arts Center? These are huge projects for downtown. We're taking some questions from the audience. We have a few minutes here. The first question, a couple of them, about green space. And almost all of you hit green space in your answer about what a future could look like. Concerned about what can we do to address the lack of green space, and then particularly during the development and redevelopment phase. And I also would like just someone to touch base on the project, the Lake Monona waterfront, which I think is such a key project that can arc the south side to the east side through downtown and really potentially talk about dreaming big. This could be a project that could change Madison and our access to water and green space in downtown forever.
I think the question of more, I'm going to say open space downtown has been one that, it's been in front of us for a long time. Alder Revere has been a staunch advocate for more downtown parks. The sad reality is there's just not a lot of land available. And, we have had in the city budget for years the idea of purchasing land for more downtown parks. And we just literally are not able to find willing sellers. And you have to also ask yourself a little bit, like, yes, we need green space, yes, we need parks, but there's a trade-off here between the density that we need and see appetite for and holding space open. You have to find that right balance. It's one of the reasons that, we keep our eye at the city, we keep our eyes out for opportunities to acquire property really all over the city for things like parks and, fire stations and libraries and all the other amenities that we create. But it's a difficult nut to crack downtown. I will say, though, that the John Nolan corridor is a tremendous opportunity to create better usable open space downtown. And the conversation is happening right now. We're coming up on one of our first meetings about redoing the John Nolan Causeway. And my staff are probably going to be mad at me for saying this out loud, but what I would really like to see is that we create a linear park that runs along from Machinery Row, right, all the way to Olin Park. And that we are really developing that whole lakefront as usable open space, not just a transportation corridor, right, but building in places that people can stop and play and hang out and have public art and do a picnic, take a selfie, right? Have that Instagrammable moment. I just really think there's so much opportunity there. It's such an iconic piece of Madison. We are going to be redoing that infrastructure. It's going to be incredibly expensive, let me warn you all right now. But if we're going to be spending the money, we should be spending the money to do it right and to make it a place that people can enjoy.
I just want to make sure this is recorded, right? Because we are very much in agreement on that. And the causeway is being rebuilt in 2026, I believe. The Line Energy work, the amazingly smart purchase by the city of the Medical Association building. There's a lot of things happening. All right, so we only have like a couple seconds left, unfortunately, here. In a minute apiece, what is your dream for downtown Madison in the future?
I'll start, and I'll be brief, okay? I'll say that I would love to see an inclusive and vibrant, again, I'm going to use the word sexy city because it's appealing, something that is, again, we are a growing city. The diversity factor is, we're growing. The Asian population, the African American, Latino population is growing. So we have to be cognizant of that. And then also, how do we value our employees? I know that Amy and I had spoken about how do we create more value for people who are already here and who are loyal to the city and make them feel even more welcome. There's a lot of activities, and I'll let Amy explain that maybe quickly, but I see a more inclusive city, and I hope that we are able to continue that dialogue on how we do that. So,
Ellie.
Thank you. I agree with Jessica on that. The balance of independent, original restaurants and shops with chains. Because visitors love to come and shop and eat and dine somewhere they just haven't been before. And I think that could be a challenge for us if all of a sudden we see State Street become a bunch of chains. I think some chains are important. That Target going in is so important, I think. But at the same time, one of the things my husband and I have been enjoying is all these unique restaurants that are in Madison. So I think as we grow, and that becomes important for the visitor, but it's really important for quality of life, I believe. And then with all of that, a really vibrant workforce. We have huge workforce issues in our city, really across the country. So Amy and I talk about this all the time. How do we get somebody from Chicago who's thinking about moving to move to Madison and not move to Minneapolis or, somewhere else? That vibrant experience that a visitor could have, a resident could have as well. And it really is such a great reason to move here, because I always tell people one of the many things I'm loving about Madison is that it has everything that you'd want in a big city, with museums and music and, shops and restaurants. But it's such a manageable city. It's easy to walk around. It's easy to drive around. And I know we've got some growth issues there, but overall, it's such a great experience. And I think we can increase our workforce because of that.
Yeah, I loathe boxing analogies because it's fighting. But, Madison can often punch above its weight class.
Absolutely.
Right, because of the amenities we have. Again,
That's exactly right.
If someone could find a better analogy for me than the boxing one, that'd be great. Amy.
I'd really like to see us become a world-class modern city. I'd like to see us continue to invest in technology and in improvements to make both the resident and visitor experience better in the downtown. I'd like to see us, truly invest in creating a diverse community in our city, and really be thoughtful in how we approach that, and be a city that is envied for that. I'd like to see us continue to invest in us being an educational and science hub. It's a huge advantage that we have. Look at where we're sitting right now. What an incredible institution UW is. And to be able to, again, find partnerships between the institution's business and our government bodies to really catalyze what's great about this place, and really see those advantages or really take advantage of all the opportunity that's in front of us. I think it can be done with what we're seeing here. I mean, Jessica and Ellie and I have had a lot of conversations in the last year and a half about a lot of issues. And, a year and a half ago, Ellie wasn't here. We're very happy to have you here. But Jessica was, and I had met Jessica, but we had never sat down and talked in real in-depth terms about what needs to change, can change, how it works, what's viable, what's not viable. Those conversations can continue.
Mayor.
I'd like to see a net zero carbon downtown where people can, where it's easily accessible to people from all over our city, and people can come and build wealth, and that everybody in Madison can take advantage of what's positive about our downtown.
I think the future is very bright in Madison. You see the change happening already. You talked about technology, the amazing announcement yesterday of the computer data and information sciences building going up in downtown. There's about 2,500 apartment units in the entitlement or construction phase right downtown. So we need to be planning for the future today, because the future starts today. That is maybe the most trite thing I've ever said in my life. But we'll end with that. Thank you all for joining us today. To Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, Amy Supple from the Edgewater Hotel, Ellie Westman-Chen from Destination Madison, and Jessica Vasas from Wisconsin Latino Chamber of Commerce. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you soon, and we hope to see you downtown with some shopping bags and eating in our restaurants and going to our hotels. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you soon.
We would like to take another moment to thank our sponsors, whose financial support helps make Cap Times Idea Fest the important event that it is. Special thanks to our presenting sponsor, UBS, the Burrish Group. They have been a major sponsor since the very first Idea Fest. Major sponsors include HealthX Ventures, Exact Sciences, and Quartz. Co-sponsors are Madison Gas and Electric, Godfrey & Kahn Law, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and EPIC. Our Friends of IdeaFest sponsors are Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, Madison Community Foundation, University Research Park, Cargo Coffee, Doc Smokehouse, and Forward Theater Company. Our media partners are the Wisconsin State Journal, Madison.com, WKOW Channel 27, and Hinckley Productions. Again, we thank you for your support and for making IdeaFest 2021 a huge success.